The descent into the unconscious I'm called it the night sea journey. Others have called it the dark night of the soul. It is not a metaphor for sorrow. It is the living, breathing truth of what it means to awaken. And it never begins with light. It begins with loss, when the surface world no longer holds you, when your dreams break apart and the roles you play commands but in dreams. He knew that to become whole, we must go into the places we fear the most. The descent into the unconscious is not the end of the road. It is the beginning, for in that darkness lies the seed of the self, and when the time is right it will bloom, and you will rise, not as the person you were, but as the soul you were always meant to be. Ego death and the breakdown of identity, there is no greater burden a child bears than the unlived life of the parents. What you call yourself, this mask, this fragile identity built from borrowed ideas and broken inheritance, it must die. Yes, die, and I do not speak in metaphor. I speak of psychic death, of ego death, the terrifying moment when the scaffolding of who you thought you were begins to crumble. You will resist it. You will cling to your roles, your titles, your polished persona. The mother, the achiever, the good child, the intellectual, the spiritual one, all costumes, all lies, all defenses against the truth buried within you. But there comes a time, a sacred time, when the soul can no longer bear to be hidden. It begins to stir, it begins to ache, and the life you built to protect yourself becomes the prison you must escape, and so the walls fall. You experience what the mystics have called the dark night. You feel as though you are unraveling. And you are. Your sense of identity collapses. What you once trusted, your beliefs, your relationships, even your name feels foreign, irrelevant, hollow. This is not depression. It is descent. This is not madness. It is metamorphosis. The ego, in all its vanity, cannot guide you here. It knows only survival, but the self, the deeper truth of who you are, whispers through the rubble. In this dark night you are stripped bare. You will feel lost, exposed, alone, but let me remind you, the persona is a shell, a tool forged for social survival. It was never meant to be the fullness of your being. You are not what pleases your parents. You are not what fits neatly into the collective's expectations. You are not the mask you wear to feel loved. No, you are a soul vast, ancient, radiant, hidden beneath layers of protection and pretense. The death of the ego is terrifying because it feels like you are dying, but what is truly dying is the illusion, the false self, the obedient servant of social expectation. In this space you may weep. You may rage, you may feel utterly undone. Good, tears are the baptism of the soul. Anger is the fire of purification. Emptiness is the womb of rebirth. Let yourself be dismantled. Your pain is not punishment. It is passage. You were never meant to live inside a role. You were meant to embody a soul. The breakdown you fear is the break through you need. During my own descent I came apart. I lost interest in the world I once admired. My work felt hollow, my words empty. I wandered psychologically, spiritually into the wastelands of meaninglessness. But from that barren ground something grew. Symbols began to return, images, visions, dreams. The unconscious, no longer ignored, began to speak. And when I listened, I discovered not ruin but roots, roots of a self I had forgotten. The ego, once it dies, leaves space for something ancient to rise, the archetypal self. This self is not constructed, it is remembered. It does not obey the voice of culture, but the voice of the soul. You will know you are meeting it when your truth feels dangerous but undeniable, when what you long to say makes your voice tremble and yet you speak, when what you dream to create feels too big and yet you begin. This is how you begin to live again, not as a puppet of the world, but as a soul lit from within. So if you find yourself in the dark, if you are disoriented, raw, trembling, do not rush to rebuild your identity. Do not scramble to find a new mask. Be still. Let the ego grieve its death. Let the ashes fall. Then, in time, the self will rise. It will not shout. It will not perform. It will simply be, and in that presence you will know not with the mind, but with the marrow that you are no longer acting. You are no longer pretending. You are no longer controlled. You are individuated, whole, alive. Yes, this journey will cost you everything that is false, but it will give you back everything that is real. Your life will not look the same. Your relationships may not survive. Your career may crumble, but what emerges from the ruins will be true, and truth is worth the fire. I do not speak these words to comfort you. I speak them to awaken you, for the fire you fear is your liberation. The ego must fall so the self can rise, and you, yes, you were born to rise. There comes a moment in every soul's journey when the light begins to dim, when certainties begin to dissolve, and the self you thought you were begins to crumble. This is not a punishment, it is not failure, it is the threshold of the inner world calling you home. Jung called it the confrontation with the shadow, the descent into the unknown parts of yourself, the journey through the darkness not to escape it, but to finally see it. And so the dark night arrives, not as an enemy, but as a guide. It strips away illusion, it silences the ego, and it places you face with what you've spent your whole life avoiding, your shadow. The shadow is not a monster lurking in the dark. It is the darkness you've denied within yourself. It is every part of you that was rejected, shamed, silenced, or exiled. The anger you weren't allowed to express. The fear you were told to hide. The desires you buried because they didn't fit the mold. The memories you locked away because they hurt too much to remember. They did not disappear. They sank. They retreated into the unconscious, waiting, not for revenge, but for redemption. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light. Jung reminds us, but by making the darkness conscious. And when it rises, when grief floods without warning, when envy stings the heart, when rage bubbles beneath the surface, it is not a sign that you are broken. It is the shadow emerging from the depths. You are not being destroyed. You are being given an invitation to reclaim the disowned fragments of your soul. But the ego will resist. It will scream, "This is wrong. This is dangerous. Run." Because the ego was built to protect your image, not your truth. And yet something deeper whispers, "Stay, witness, listen. The shadow cannot be killed. It cannot be exiled again. The only way out is through. The only way to heal is to face it." This is why the confrontation with the shadow feels like a storm. Because it is the meeting of opposites, the mask and the mirror, the persona and the truth, the self you show and the self you hide. And in this confrontation you may feel shame, disgust, grief, or terror. You may question everything you've known. You may feel like you are falling apart. But falling apart is sometimes the only way to break the prison of a false self. The shadow does not rise to harm you. It rises to remind you of everything you lost in your pursuit of being good, perfect, accepted. The truth is we all wear masks. We all split off from parts of ourselves just to survive in a world that rewards conformity and punishes authenticity. But the soul was never meant to live in fragments, and the shadow is the doorway to becoming whole again. To meet it is to step into sacred territory where wounds become wisdom and pain becomes power. You begin to see that the parts you rejected hold the key to your passion, your purpose, your depth. Your anger becomes your boundary. Your grief becomes your capacity to love. Your fear becomes the soil of your courage. To integrate the shadow is to recover the gold buried in the dark. Jung called this process individuation. the unfolding of the true self, not the ideal self, but the real one, not the polished image? But the raw, living soul, this is not the path of the many. It is the path of the few, the brave, the honest, the ones who dare to turn inward, to walk through fire without running. And what emerges on the other side is not perfection, but wholeness. You no longer have to pretend, you no longer have to hide, you no longer fear your darkness, because you have walked through it. You have met yourself in the depths, and you did not turn away, and that is strength. That is freedom. So if you find yourself in the dark, if your soul trembles and your world collapses, know this: you are not lost. You are being found. You are not breaking. You are becoming. The shadow is your forgotten twin. It is the gatekeeper to your truth, and once you embrace it, you will never again settle for the surface. You will begin to live from a deeper place, a place of authenticity, of rootedness, of peace. Because you will know you are not only the light, you are also the flame that walks through the dark, and in this truth you are whole. Encounters with the self, there comes a moment. After the darkness has spoken, after the shadow has been seen, when something begins to stir in the silence. It is subtle, it is sacred, it is the first whisper of the self. You thought the journey was about surviving the pain, but the pain was only the passage, the initiation, the sacred threshold, and on the other side of your suffering there waits something ancient, radiant, and whole. Not outside you, but within. This is the self, not the ego you built for the world, not the roles you learned to play, but the deeper intelligence that has been guiding you all along. The self is both God and man, Jung once said. And in this encounter you begin to understand what he meant. You are not merely human, you are not merely mind, you are the meeting point between heaven and earth, between the divine and the broken, between the eternal and the temporary, and for the first time you begin to feel whole. The dark night was not your undoing, it was your unveiling. It stripped away the illusions, the identities, the masks, until nothing was left but truth. And truth is not always beautiful in the beginning. It is raw, it is unfiltered, it is vulnerable, but it is yours, and it is real. The self is not a fantasy of perfection. It is the integration of opposites, the light and the shadow, the wound and the wisdom, the fear and the faith. It holds it all, without judgment. When you encounter the self, you are no longer divided inside. You are no longer at war with yourself. The fragments begin to weave together into a sacred tapestry, a soul remembered. This is the alchemy of the soul. The gold is not found outside, but forged within in the heat of every dark night, in the ashes of every false self. You begin to see that the descent was necessary, the chaos had meaning, the fire was purifying you so that you could meet your soul, naked and unafraid. You realize that the self was not sleeping, it was waiting, waiting for you to stop pretending, waiting for you to let go, waiting for you to remember that you are not separate from the sacred. You are the sacred, and this remembrance changes everything. You no longer chase validation. You no longer seek worth in the eyes of others. You no longer fear solitude, because solitude becomes your sanctuary. The self teaches you to live from within, to follow the compass of your own intuition, to bow not to the opinions of the world, but to the wisdom that rises in silence. You begin to trust your inner knowing. You begin to move with purpose, not performance. You begin to live with presence, not pressure. And this is what Jung meant by individuation, not becoming perfect, but becoming whole, becoming real, becoming your true nature. And what is your nature? It is divine, it is wild, it is infinitely creative. It is the quiet fire that never dies. The self holds the blueprint of your becoming, and when you begin to live from that place, you begin to radiate truth. Not the truth they taught you, but the truth your soul always knew. You begin to walk a different path, not louder, but deeper, not safer. but more alive. You are no longer trapped in the stories of who you should be. You begin to embody who you are fully, fiercely, and unapologetically. This is the spiritual transformation Jung spoke of. Not a religion, not a dogma, but an awakening, a remembering of the God within, the light within, the self within. The journey through darkness becomes sacred because it leads you here to the center of your being. To the divine spark you had forgotten, this is not just psychology, it is alchemy. It is the soul turning lead into gold, pain into purpose, shadow into strength, suffering into sacred power, and now you begin to live not from fear but from soul, not from the past but from presence, not for approval but for truth, and your life becomes a reflection of the inner wholeness you have touched. You no longer need to prove your worth, you are worth. You no longer need to chase love, you are love. This is the self, the I am that needs no title, the presence that simply is. It cannot be earned, only remembered, only lived, so let the world spin, let the noise rise. Let the old identities fall away. You have encountered the self, and now you walk from a place of sacred clarity, no longer asleep, no longer fragmented, but whole, and in your wholeness you become a mirror, a light, a quiet invitation for others to meet themselves too. Synchronicity as divine guidance when all seems silent, when the path ahead disappears into mist, when even prayer echoes back empty. You may think you've been abandoned, but the soul knows something the mind has forgotten. You are not alone. Though the world may fall silent, the unconscious does not. Even in your loneliest hour, especially, then it begins to speak in its native tongue. Symbol, dream, and synchronicity. You may call them accidents. Coincidences, flashes of strange meaning in a random world, but Jung called them something more. Synchronicities, sacred alignments, glimpses into the divine pattern behind appearances. Moments when the outer world and the inner world suddenly rhyme, as if something beyond space and time was quietly guiding your steps. The unconscious, Jung said, is not a chaotic mess, it is the source of meaning. It knows your longing. It hears the cry beneath your silence, and it begins to answer, not with noise, but with symbols, a dream of water just before you break, a stranger's words that echo your hidden prayer, a song on the radio that mirrors your soul's secret. These are not accidents, they are alignments, tiny golden threads woven into your everyday life, pulling you gently toward your becoming. You see, when you enter the depths, when you surrender your masks, your goals, your ego's plans, you open the space for something higher to move. Synchronicity arises not from control, but from surrender, not from logic, but from listening. It is grace disguised as coincidence. It is the soul's way of whispering, keep going. You're on the path, even if you cannot see it. Because the self, the divine center within you, is always orchestrating your return. It will send messengers in every form, a child's laughter, a book falling from a shelf, a forgotten friend calling just when you need them. These signs do not shout, they shimmer. You feel them in your bones not as facts, but as knowing. They speak to something older than words, the ancient part of you that remembers this life is not random, that something sacred is unfolding, even in the chaos, even when your heart is breaking, even when nothing makes sense, especially then, because synchronicity often appears when the ego is exhausted and the soul begins to lead. You stop forcing, you start listening, you let go of needing to know, and in that sacred space the divine begins to speak in symbols, a dream of flight, a recurring number, a line in a poem that cracks your heart wide open. You are being guided not by a map, but by resonance, by the subtle pulse of alignment, by the mysterious way the universe mirrors your inner state, and though you may doubt it, the timing is never random. The people you meet, the detours you take, the delays, the losses, the moments of all serve something larger, a design beyond comprehension, and yet It feels utterly personal because it is. The unconscious is not foreign. It is you. It is your divine mirror. It contains the blueprint of your wholeness. And when you begin to trust it even just a little, the path begins to shimmer, not with certainty, but with meaning. Synchronicities don't answer every question. They awaken you to a deeper way of living, a way where meaning matters more than control, where soul matters more than success, where presence is the only compass you need. And as you learn this sacred dance, the dance of listening, trusting, surrendering, you begin to walk not just through life, but through mystery, and mystery is not empty. It is holy. In the darkness you thought you were lost. But the darkness is the womb of transformation, and the signs were there all along, waiting for you to slow down, to feel, to notice. You don't have to understand it all. You don't have to figure it out. You are allowed to simply believe in meaning, to trust what moves your soul, to follow what stirs your spirit. Synchronicity is the soul's language. It will never argue with you, but it will always invite you deeper. So when the moment arrives and you feel something shift inside, when the hair stands on your arms or your breath catches in your chest, pause, listen, because something sacred is trying to get your attention. You are being spoken to, and in that moment, however fleeting, you are no longer alone. You are held by something vast and wise and infinitely loving. Call it the unconscious, call it God, call it the self. Whatever name you choose, know this. It has not forgotten you. It never left you. It only waited for you to awaken to the signs, to the dreams, to the shimmering truth behind the veil. You are not abandoned. You are not lost. You are being led, one synchronicity at a time. There is a reason for the darkness, not a punishment, not a curse, but a process, an ancient path the soul walks when it is ready to become real. Carl Jung called it individuation, the slow, sacred unfolding of the self, the journey of becoming who you truly are beneath every mask, beneath every story, beneath every wound. And this is why the dark night comes. Not to destroy you, but to strip away everything that is not you. What you resist persists. Jung said, what you embrace transforms. You are not here to perfect the persona. You are here to uncover the soul. And that path is rarely comfortable. It is not found in comfort zones or applause. It is found in the stillness after the storm, in the ache of truth that cannot be ignored, in the quiet places where your masks fall away and you are left with only yourself. But this is where the real journey begins. This is where transformation ignites. You see, the suffering is not meaningless. It is the labor of becoming. It is the tension that stretches the soul open so that something larger can be born. A self that is not edited, not polished, not performed, but authentic. The ego will fight this. It will cling to control, to the old identities, to the illusions of safety. But the self, the deeper, wiser core of you, is not interested in who the world thinks you are. It is interested in who you truly are, and it will not rest until you remember. So the old patterns break. The roles fall apart. The life you built begins to crack, not because you failed, but because something deeper is trying to break through. The purpose of the darkness is not to trap you. It is to free you from the chains of who you were told to be, to free you from the conditioning that made you small, to free you from the false self that was never yours to begin with. And it hurts because shedding what is false always does, because the death of illusion feels like the death of identity, but it is not your death, it is your birth. You are not falling apart, you are falling inward toward truth, toward essence, toward soul. This is individuation, the path of reclaiming every lost fragment, of integrating the shadow, honoring the dream, listening to the signs, and slowly becoming whole. You are not here to become better. You are here to become you, and that is the most sacred work a human can do. It is not about transcendence. It is about integration, the sacred and the scarred, the fear and the wisdom, the wound and the wonder. All of it is part of you. All of it is welcome. The path is not upward. It is inward, into the darkness, through the fire, into the deepest layers of your psyche, where your true self waits. It has always been there, watching, waiting, whispering in dreams and longings and strange synchronicities, and now you are ready to meet it. You begin to see that even your pain had purpose. It showed you what needed healing. It revealed the cracks where light could enter. It humbled the ego and awakened the soul. The grief, it opened your heart. The fear, it led you to courage. The emptiness, it carved out space for something real to grow. This is why the dark night is sacred, because it initiates you. It strips away the superficial, and it reveals the eternal, not out there, but within. You begin to live differently, not for the world, but from the soul. You speak more honestly, you love more deeply, you move more slowly. You begin to trust the rhythm of your own becoming, and you no longer chase perfection. You embody wholeness. This is the gift of individuation. It is not the path of the many. It is the quiet, courageous path of those who dare to know themselves. And once you walk it, you will never go back to pretending, because the truth, your truth, tastes too sweet. And now you see the darkness not as an enemy, but as a teacher, as the very womb that birthed your awakening. You shed the false self, not with violence, but with reverence. You bow to the journey. You honor every scar. And you walk forward, not as who you were, but as who you truly are. You are not broken. You are becoming, not perfect, but whole, not finished, but unfolding. So if you are in the darkness now, do not fear it. Do not run. Let it shape you. Let it burn away the lies. Let it carve a deeper truth into your being, because on the other side of this pain is you, and you are worth the fire. From darkness to wholeness he respected the depth, pain, and holiness of the dark night. But he also promised this. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. And in that terrifying acceptance the light is born, not from outside, but from the soul itself.